Hello and welcome back to Ys 5, Winging It Edition. That's kind of why this video is longer than the others I've been putting out. So, we're ready to move forward and apparently get poisoned. Well, this is why I bought antidotes in town. Thankfully, poison is not something that has 100% occurrence on hit. Otherwise, even the 10 maximum that I could buy would not be enough. Now that we've cleared everything up in the Zeb ruins and that town over there, it's time to head north. Through the jungle that's supposedly full of all of the poison. What's going to be coming up is a very jump-heavy section. And thankfully, I think the last jump-heavy section in the game. Even though you can jump, the game is not really super jump-heavy, unlike, say, some places in Ark of Napishtim or Othin Felghana. And the consequences for following it usually aren't severe. They usually only cost time. Well, it turns out my sword has a minimum range. That has never happened before. An inn? What is it with you people and your inns? First in the middle of a swamp, now on some steep crags. Wouldn't be surprised at this point if there was an inn with lava in this game. Decided to take the opportunity to save because who knew what would happen? That guy by the book is an alchemist. He's the guy who makes magic stones out of the elements we pick up. We will be talking to one later in this video, but not now. Okay. This place is full of jumps. If you mess up on any of them, you end up back at the end. Any of them. And later on is a tricky jump that requires you to go against your instinct in order to make. Okay, that's when I remembered where my sword button was. Okay, there we go. The game is better about some things than others when it comes to the Z-axis. Okay, the shield ring is like the power ring but for defense. I will be keeping the power ring on for pretty much the whole game. Adol's defense is high enough that I don't really feel that there's a huge enough need for the shield ring, unlike in, say, Ys 1. Where there were things like Darm Tower that could hurt you super bad. Okay. Up. Up. There we go. You're not fooling me, Flower Bug. Okay, here we go. And this is the jump. Here's what happens when you try to make it normally. You can't make it normally. In case, I'll be skipping back to making it right back up to that spot. Give me a moment. Okay, here we are. Now what you actually need to do is get in the water for a little bit and then try the jump. Yeah, this is the only spot where I use states in this game. Okay, these little guys are no real problem for us. They're not as nasty as most of the other enemies at this point in the game. I would say what they were, but I'm just gonna let that be a little bit of a surprise. I was wondering where you ran off to. Oh, okay. Well, it's gone now. You've been around this block before, haven't you, Stoker? But surviving impossible things is what an adult does. Okay, this is the jungle. The jungle is a pretty nasty place, not because of the monsters or anything, though those are not fun either, but because this place is a bit of a labyrinth, and there are a lot of exits to the various areas that'll wrap you back around, and you could find yourself in a loop pretty easily. There are certain rather specific exits you need to find and take from each place in order to actually progress. And for the first time through, this could end up to be pretty rough. No, wait, not could, it will. You know, the other thing. Yes, those mobile trees actually absorb fire, so I'm willing to bet they're weak against blunt weapons too, like that damn Tendriculos. This is the way you actually need to hop up. Yeah, that thing just grabbed me, so... And again... I'm willing to bet that magic defense also affects your status resistance, but you can't really quote me on that. I haven't really studied the mechanics of Ys 5 too deeply because previous Ys games did not have particularly deep mechanical stuff. There are like 6 stats in this game, whereas in previous Ys games, and even some of the following Ys games, there were only 2. When I said something about nastier enemies, I was talking about the laser crab. Why crabs would ever develop an ecological need for weapon-grade lasers is beyond me, but you know, jungles are weird like that. Hey, new level. Always welcome. civilization or whatever passes for it around here. And there's no need to save quite yet. Maybe. Well, yeah. And yes, though Dorman gets more shifty by the minute. So Adol has not actually been sleeping this whole time? Flashback. Now that spell that Foresta used to defeat the soldiers is actually in this game, and we will be getting it. You know, Stoker, I'm beginning to wonder if it's either you or Dorman that's appearing more shady at this point. Also, Stoker said he was almost 600 years old, and that event, you know, going by all the stories around here, took place about 500 years ago. So he's already really old, even before all that. Okay, these tornadoes. Do not get hit by those tornadoes. Okay, in this room you have to kill all of the spawning bugs before you're actually allowed to proceed north. This is the only part in the game that has a mandatory kill all enemies rule, aside from the next room and, you know, bosses. Wait, actually, there is one more special event where you have to do it. But that's a fair bit later. Oh dear, the damage is sort of stacking up. Oh yeah, we have a map in this game. It's not usually necessary, and plus it doesn't actually show you all that much. Doesn't show you any routes or roads or anything like that. Okay, this enemy. It doesn't seem to do anything, but if you leave it alone for long enough, it will actually cast a spell. You must interrupt this spell, because if you let it come off, it will spawn tons of meteors that fall from the sky and are unblockable and will most certainly hit you because they are completely random and have no fixed pattern whatsoever. There will be a few more of them later on. Okay, photosynthesize a bit. Okay, Azort. Azort is a pretty easy boss. He only has 2 attacks, and he's actually only going to use one of them this time. The Stalactite Ball. He should have another one where he throws a couple of tornadoes that aren't as damaging as the ones in the field, but are still pretty nasty. However, he only opts to use the stalactite bombs this time, and in the time it took me to explain, he's already dead. That's the Ys 5 I've heard about. And the crystal is mine with no interference from villains. You know, this is beginning to feel like what would happen if Adol got dumped into a Final Fantasy game. The seal isn't working? Nah! Well, looks like we're going to have to somehow get to Kefin itself. I was just checking the pots for elements. Oh boy. Well, it hasn't exactly been flowers and sunshine doing Stoker's work. Okay, past the town we were just at. Water travel not going well for Adol. You know, between this, Ys 1 and Ark of Nepishtim, this is probably going to feel pretty old for Adol eventually. And helped by a girl, too. That'll happen sometimes. Ys 5 is pretty much where they decide that everything Adol said would be delivered either by implication or in the third person from some sort of omniscient narrator. Unfortunately, in this game, we don't have Dogi to speak what the audience is thinking. Well, hey, what are adventurers for? There are a couple of things we want in this town before we move on. They don't actually have any better weapons and armor here than in the previous town, though there's a place where I can get better stuff. Okay. If I don't have the desert cloak, I will take continual damage when I'm out in the actual desert. So, back to Dogi. One of the differences between this game and the original concept, which was more realized in the PlayStation 2 remake of this game by Taito, was that Dogi was actually involved in the story. I guess that Falcom, or well, at least Taito, in Falcom's partnership, felt that an Ys game without Dogi was like a day without sunshine, and I can kinda get behind that sentiment. Okay, a light element. That's exactly what we need. Now, I'm going to save before I make this next magic, because I kinda forgot which one is the actual light magic I want. So I may end up with the wrong one. Oh, which one was it? No, that's not it. You know what, let's try this one. Better than being covered in bees, I guess. Okay, now we make the magic. And I put all of the magic stones in a blender, and here we go. Okay, now how do I... There we go. You can have up to 3 magics slotted into one sword. Oh. And you need to select the proper one. These guys also absorb fire. Now get our actual magic ready. I picked the wrong one. I think I saved before that. I'm gonna get chewed up a bit, but I'm just gonna go do what I had planned to do anyway. You see, while there are some pretty nasty monsters here, this road does lead to something very useful. Because normally you would actually only go this way a bit later, maybe after you've completed the next dungeon. But it's not too difficult to speed through. And it leads us to a place where we can actually get better stuff than what we have armor and weapon-wise. Oh yes, in the original concept, Stoker and Foresta's story did not exist, and they don't exist in the PS2 remake by Taito. Okay, after some mispresses of the buttons... Yeah, this is the place. This place sells the most powerful equipment that Cash can actually buy. And we're going to be taking advantage of that before the next dungeon. This has been Ys 5, and see you next time.